Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Grapevine. I'm Susie.
Susan. And I'm Riham.
And today we have a very special topic. We actually came up with this topic after what happened in Las Vegas a little while ago. And of course, it happened 14 months later after what happened to the Pulse Club nightclub in Orlando. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about guns, firearms, gun ownership, gun safety, and the Second Amendment and the Christian perspective on guns. And we have two special guests that are going to answer a lot of our questions because it is such a debatable topic. Our first guest is
Father Moussa Saleh from St. George Church, Tampa, Florida.
Welcome, Abuna. And our second guest,
Hany Tawadrous, also a member of St. George Church in Tampa.
Welcome, Hany.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure that you guys are here visiting with us and ready to answer our questions. We know that it kind of causes a lot of fights across the board, politics and about rights. So the first thing I usually like to think about when I'm thinking about guns or whenever guns are brought into a conversation is the Bill of Rights. And for many of our viewers who were born in Egypt, they might not know what they are, but our Bill of Rights are rights that Americans believe are God-given, are the first 10 amendments in our Constitution. And the Second Amendment actually deals with the right to bear arms and guns. It actually says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Second Amendment the Bill of Rights was ratified in the 1700s by the fathers of the United States, and it's considered a very important right. I think a lot of people say that the Second Amendment keeps the government from being able to impose tyranny. But before we get to that, I just want to know, what are your thoughts on guns, gun control laws, restrictions, and gun safety? Anyone can start. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on it.
I can start. Brief, thought on guns. Well, as you mentioned, the presence and use of guns and the legal presence and use of guns may be something that we're not used to coming from other countries, especially, for instance, Egypt, to the United States. It is part of the culture. It is set in the Constitution, as you mentioned. And the only thing I can say right off the bat, that carrying a gun or having a gun cannot guarantee 100% protection. There is nothing that can guarantee 100% protection. However, it helps if the person knows what to do with it. So there are other ways that you can protect yourself, your family, and your property, especially when it comes to self-protection or self-defense. I like to use self-protection better. Situational awareness, planning ahead. The first or best defense is not to get yourself in a bad situation in the first place. So if you know there is, why stop at a shady area or an area that you don't know, you're not comfortable with, and if you just avoid that, that's even better than getting yourself in trouble and having to use a gun or not. Situational awareness. So you're leaving your house or or a store in a mall. You look up. Just be aware of what's around you. Okay, walking to your car, leaving work at night. So there are other ways to protect yourself. Yes, there are. However, owning a gun or carrying a gun or keeping a gun at home or keeping a gun in the car is one of those ways. And of course, again, as a Christian myself, I do believe that the Lord is my sole shield from harm. Talking about guns or any other way comes in the context of doing your part.
I agree with Hany about that Christianity really backs up self-defense. Yes, it's a mentally issue that you have really to have some kind or a sort of a weapon or a gun to protect yourself. Only protecting yourself, not to be against anyone or use it unwisely. But what is self-defense here? What is self-defense you are talking about? Self-defense means I shoot somebody coming into my land just because he's crossing the border. What is self-defense? Somebody's coming to rob my house. Somebody's coming to attack me. What is self-defense in my understanding? That's why really we need to have some kind of a revision for the Second Amendment? What was the need for the Second Amendment to start with, to exist? So it's here in the Second Amendment say, being necessary for a free state.
Right.
Now all states are free. I'm not trying to be criticizing the Second Amendment, but the reason for having a right to carry a gun is to have a free state. Now all the states are free. So it's okay. Yes, I'm not gonna say to change this, but it's okay to have some kind of a weapon, some kind of a gun to protect yourself. But really we need to make sure that what does self-defense mean and what's the mental status of this person who is carrying the gun. So what it means to him or to her to carry a self-defense, carry a gun, okay?
Okay, I can really quickly comment on that, if I may. So self-defense or using a gun comes in the context of using fatal force. Right. So there are legal consequences to shooting somebody. Even if you shot somebody in self-defense, that doesn't mean that you still don't have to prove that it was self-defense. So there are parameters in place to justify the use of lethal force, such as shooting somebody. As far as what justifies that, there are legal cases that we can go into or not that makes this clear. Someone who just came on your property, it may not be, that person may not really be threatening you or threatening your family or your safety. But, you know, someone forcing their way into your house at night, uninvited, with weapons, that's clear.
But, you know, I just want to have a comment on this. If somebody is coming to my house to rob it or uninvited, come at middle of the night, and this person, let us say he has a bad intention. And of course, he's having this bad intention, having a gun, carrying a gun. And I have a gun to self-defend myself. I have two questions here. Who is ready, who is more ready to use the gun? Am I more ready than him, or he is more ready and more professional than me to use it?
He's as nervous as you are.
Yeah, number two, carrying a gun, this is, I think, would be very aggravating to him. So it may not be understood to him that it is something I can use to defend, self-defense, but it's going to be an aggravation to him. So really carrying a gun, it might help, but I don't think it really helps as it's in my mind it will help.
If I may say something, Abuna, I think, like, for example, if this person decided to come to your house and you live in a neighborhood or area or part of town that is well known that most people here do have arms in their homes, I think that is going to be a deterring factor for that person to think twice or three times before he even makes it.
This is exactly what I'm trying to say. The mental status for somebody who is having a gun. Mm-hmm. What do you think is self-defense, and what it should be in your mind? This is aggravating to the person in front of you, because not using a gun at all times is a self-defense. That's really, I'm thinking, what kind of guns or what kind of a method I should have or carry to defend myself. Is it really guns, or maybe there is more ways to be more effective than guns to self-defend myself. Also, with all this technology and all this improvements in warships and stuff like that, there is plastic bullets. There is pepper gas, and there is a lot of things you can really self-defend yourself, not to kill or not to use fatal power to kill somebody with a real bullet, just to self-defend.
Right. That would be a personal choice. That would be an option. However, your question about who is more ready. Remember, that person may not have a gun. He may have a baseball bat. He may have a knife. He may not. He is as nervous as you are. He may not be someone who's exactly playing with all deck of cards. He could be high.
But that
So
means
who's ready to deploy his weapon first? You're right. It depends. Sometimes he will be more ready. Sometimes you will be more ready. If he will be more ready, then that's really bad news for the person, for the victim. But if you hear a crash downstairs and the alarm going, or the alarm sounding, then you should have time to get ready and to be prepared to defend yourself and your family. We're talking about defending a family. Mm-hmm. So you have your family members sleeping or just in the house. Doesn't have to be in the middle of the night, by the way. A lot of them are not in the middle of the night. And they are counting on you to do that. So if we argue that having a gun and knowing exactly how to use it, because I think this is one of the misconceptions, that guns just kill by themselves. Guns are to be treated with a lot of respect because, they do kill. So the person who is handling that gun has to be trained enough, as a matter of fact, has to be very well trained to use that gun in order to not freeze up, not shoot somebody or shoot a bullet that goes through drywall and kill one of his family members.
I think that's where I struggle, though, is who's to say everybody who owns a gun is in that state of mind? And then like preparation and knowing how to use it, all those things is one thing. The responsibility of having something that could kill, like Abuna was saying, but also mental state. That's like a whole nother topic. But mental illness and how easy it is to get a gun is, I think, my biggest concern with it.
Right. So okay. Let's just say that there are billions of guns out there. Some are being used legally, and some are being used illegally. Okay. So you know that. Okay, and you have to defend yourself and your family in such a case, in a situation like this. It then becomes a personal choice. Would you not want to educate yourself about this and protect yourself, or would you want to protect yourself and your family? It's a personal choice.
I see both points. I definitely see the rubber bullet thing. I think is a great idea to have in the house, because you know what? If you can shoot someone to kind of injure them but not kill them, so you can leave and call the police, that's fantastic. I also see that it can be great self-defense, and it's a deterrent. So maybe if someone knows, just like we put an alarm sign outside of our door, on our property, on our land, saying, we've got security or ADT or whatever, we know that that's a deterrent. So, and there's some people who have the fake signs, beware of dog. It's a deterrent. So I don't know, maybe we should have a fake sign for, there's a lot of guns in our house. Enter at your own will.
This will be a bit technical, and I don't want to get a lot more technical than this. However, there are a couple of things for you to consider. When you are in a real situation, guess what's the percentage, and you're trained, okay? Say you're a police officer, or you're someone who is trained. Guess the percentage of bullets that actually hit the target. If you are in a real situation, someone is threatening you or even shooting at you, and you're trained.
And you're trained? 40%? Yes. Is it 30, 40%?
30%.
30? Wow. Right. So
an average is 30%. Second, if you shoot somebody, okay, and the adrenaline is flowing, or they're high, or whatever the case may be, you can shoot somebody and they're still coming at you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you shoot somebody in some random place and they drop. Mm-hmm. And especially with many, there are, unless you're talking about specific rounds, like a 40 cal, for example. Again, I don't want to be more technical than this. I just wanted to tell you, now you have to be trained.
Right.
And I think education about this and training are going to come up a lot in this discussion, because they cause a lot of misconceptions. I also have to admit that what causes a lot of misconceptions is the misuse of guns by some gun owners. Mm-hmm. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about the proper thing, or how things are supposed to be. Mm-hmm. You're not supposed to be not mentally stable and have a gun. We're not going to consider this to be the rule and the way, or the basis for our discussion. The proper way of using a gun is, again, what's mentioned in the Bill of Rights, and what we can assume to be the majority of the cases. In other words, you can assume that the majority of the cases are people who are unstable and they misuse the guns. However, there's enough of these people out there that cause the misconception.
Speaking of misconceptions and misunderstandings, this situation when Jesus were doing the Eucharist and they praised and they were going back to the Garden of Gethsemane, he told his disciple to take a sword, but he was not talking at all as a sword with a sword as a weapon. But that's why when it was an action and Peter started to use the sword, he told him, put it back in your place, because for who take the sword will be perished by the sword. So if Jesus would really thinking about taking a sword or a weapon, he would use it in such a situation. And he encouraged his disciple to use it, but he did not. That's why we don't encourage carrying a weapon, even if in the time of need, we don't encourage to use it. Because, of course, the reaction from Peter, now you have a multitude of soldiers, they have carrying a gun too. So if Peter react, or 2 or 3 disciples react, that means the whole group of soldiers will react, and it's going to be the end for all of them. So we don't encourage really using the sword. Also, another thing I would like to mention, people taking what happened in the Old Testament wars from the Israelite against other people. That was a good example for carrying a sword all the time. Of course, wars in the Old Testament, it should be understood completely different than what we are talking now. A lot of examples on the internet, as I was reviewing, taking David as a good example to carry a sword with him, or to carry some kind of a weapon to defend himself, or so. All of this is completely understood wrong. Why? Because in the Old Testament, God was using the Israelite, his people, as his hand to end the life of other sinful people. That was not something the Israelites would like to do, but this is what God had intended to do. Those people were sinners enough, and the cup of wrath was filled enough to God that he has to use somebody to end their lives.
And it was always directed by God. Like,
yes.
God, he would be the one to tell them, go do this or fight these people, and I will help you win, over them.
Exactly.
Not necessarily self-defense, though. I feel like this is a different aspect that we're talking about. We're mainly here focused on carrying a gun or a weapon as a self-defense.
Yes.
So, me as a person, the question in my mind, if someone is coming to attack me or coming to my house to attack my family, I can call the police. I have an alarm system. So there are things, like Hany said, there are things that I should be doing before that situation happens to help myself be safe. But what if it comes to that point? Would I have loved to have a gun? Would I have regretted not to have a gun? I don't know. It's still a question.
Also, actually, I need to say something here. Having a gun does not mean you have to use it in every situation. For example, in a scenario that that would be similar to what the example Abuna mentioned in the Garden of Gethsemane, let me just fast forward that, to today. If I think I'm entirely outgunned, and if by the time I fire one shot, I'm not going to have time to fire the other one. Okay. I'm not going to use the gun. As a matter of fact, I saw one of the real examples one time was a criminal, a thief, jumped off a bike, a motorcycle, and attacked someone for his wallet and his cell phone. Okay. And he had him in such a way that he completely controlled him. that man understood that the time it will take him to draw his weapon, his head would be blown out by the thief. So he decided not to even go to his gun. He let the person that the thief have his wallet,
Right.
and left, because that was at the time the best thing to do is not use the gun.
Right.
So again, it's not because there is a situation, I have a gun, I use it. It's not the case.
But there is another issue, actually, as you're discussing the mental status or the mental being
it's a
of a
strategy.
person.
So you're in a situation, okay, should I use my gun?
Yeah. There is also another background check.
Okay.
Background check. Now, with full respect to everybody, now there is an American citizen who was born in this country, white, black, or whatever, and there is American citizen who came from other countries.
Yeah.
What is the background, security background, knowledge background, identity background? What is identity? What is education? What is security background for those people to come here, be naturalized, have an American citizen, and then they have the right to use a gun? So what is in their minds when they are when they have a gun or a weapon in their hands? Really, there is things you need to go by. Now the actual status here in the state of Florida, it's only 3 days to give you a permit to have a gun in your house.
Yeah, but we're talking
or another
about
3 days to have a gun, you can carry a gun in your car.
Right.
So
But
6 days is not enough.
no,
So
it's
how
not.
long is the
3
background check
days.
for? I'm sorry to interrupt. How long do we know the law on that? How long? Let's say someone comes to this country and has a green card and he stays a few years. So is the background check of just his time in the United
His
States,
time,
or
most of the time, his time in the U.S., but that's 5 years.
Right. So 5 years.
So
if he
5
hasn't
years,
committed anything,
no
then-
criminal act, nothing. You gotta assume that the person is a law-abiding person.
So can someone buy a gun coming from another country that's only been here a year?
No,
No. So it has to be a citizen?
he has to be a citizen.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't know that law. That's
Yeah.
good to know.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
So that's one thing. The other thing, the 3 days. No, that's just the law about certain types of guns. A handgun, you cannot purchase a handgun and walk out of the store with it. There is a 3-day delay. So if you're going just spur of the moment, you want to buy a gun to do something, you're not going to walk out of the store with it. Background checks, I do it every time I buy a gun. Yeah. So there is an example that I would like to just put out there for discussion. Okay, and again, I'm not the expert here. I'm not, I can't talk about the church's view in the presence of Abuna. Of course, he will be the expert. But I cite something here. So the Lord, seems to have drawn on what he considered the basic right for someone to defend himself and seek to exercise his right to defend their family. He would say, or the Lord said, or how can anyone enter the strong man's house and carry off his property unless he first binds the strong man, and then he will plunder his house? So the point being is that the strong man would seek to protect his property unless, unless you can't have it or you can't get to it unless you bind him first.
I'm commenting on what Hani was asking on the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 12, verse 29, or how can anyone enter the strong man's house and carry off his property unless he first binds the strong man, and then he will plunder his house. Actually, we cannot understand this verse unless we read the whole context together. So if you go back from the beginning of the chapter till verse 30, you will understand that Jesus was talking about division. And he was given example how the devils are not divided. They are in one unity. So whatever is Jesus is talking about is giving an example of division in humans. Okay, and there is some people are weak, some people are strong. But however, all the demons they are not divided. They are in one unity. So you cannot understand this as a strong person carrying a gun or a strong person carrying a weapon going into a weak person's house and binding him and taking off his property. No, it's about division, and it's about somebody is strong, somebody is weak, somebody is coming to his house. No, we are divided as human. We may have divisions according to power or whatever, but the devils are not divided. They are strong, they are working together in groups and supporting each other. So that is how we understood this verse.
So is there anywhere in the Bible, I know the Lord says, turn the other cheek if someone hits you, or if someone takes your cloak, give him, or someone takes something from you, give him your cloak. So we're always saying, our Lord is very peaceful. He's saying, if anyone steals from you, let them have it. If anyone hits you on the face, let them have it. Is there anywhere in the Bible where the Lord is condemning weapons or weaponry at all?
Whatever Jesus was defending is not to attack back. Mm-hmm. Not to attack back. Not rewarding evil for evil. Not evil for evil. So if evil comes to me, that means it's by allowance from God. God allowed this to happen to me. So it's for a reason. I am not saying to accept punishment or to accept any bad things come to me just because it's the Lord said not rewarding evil for evil. But there is certain ways I can defend my rights. Not by the sword. By several things I can defend my rights. If you remember St. Paul in the book of Acts, he was asking, how come you whipping us? How come you slash us or you whipped us and we are not judged? So you have to go, how come you punish me by slashing or 39 slashes and then I am not lawfully lodged by a court. I'm a Roman citizen. I should not be whipped. And now you are whipping me. So there is a defense. He made it clearly with a logic point. So there is a way to defend your rights, not to attack back.
I think that's exactly why I struggle with it, is because when I do think of an intruder coming into my house or somebody coming to attack me, I feel like, isn't that like, I mean, I know God doesn't wish anything bad on us, but it's like saying, like, maybe this is my time. Like, but there's something inside me that feels, if I pull out a gun and my option is to kill them, I understand legally I'm probably in the right.
Yes.
But I don't see, I just feel like it conflicts with Christianity, and it's just something I struggle with.
Right, and I think that's why in my very first comment I said that the Lord is our sole shield from harm. However, in everything that the Lord asks us to do, we have to do our part. So if you do your part, and you do your best to protect yourself or your family, and it still happens, well, then it's your turn. Your number's up. Yeah. But otherwise, we're only really talking, about it in that context. It's one option that you can consider. Understand there are billions of guns out there. It's set in the Constitution. Please try to weed the misconceptions and the bad rhetoric out of it, because it's highly political and everyone has an agenda, and so it becomes very hard for someone who's not very deeply rooted in this country to understand the real debate. Right. Okay, so again, it's one option. Is it my preferred option? No. Coming from a gun guy, no, it's not. Okay, that's a bad situation. By the time you're actually having to use a gun, there's a lot of bad things already happened, but it's an option that you have in the context of doing your part. What's on the line? Safety of yourself and your family.
Okay, so my question is then, what is the Coptic stance and view on gun ownership in the end, especially for the United States? Not so much for Egypt, because I think in Egypt, it's just, I don't think a Christian should own it, because that would be the end of end of Christianity in Egypt as we know it. But what is the Coptic Christian view of gun ownership here in the United States? And I'd love that answer from you, Abuna. And If you guys want the answer, please come back and join us for the next episode. It'll be next week with Abuna and Hany talking about gun ownership and answering this question.